What's happening? Welcome to Everything Pats, a New England Patriots podcast. As always, thanks for joining us. It is very much appreciated. Over the past 3 days or so, there has been just a ton of reporting about the Patriots offseason and what the Patriots are going to do or what they want to do. But before we get to the Patriots' plans, some breaking news that ties into those plans. T. Higgins has been officially franchised by Cincinnati. So T. Higgins franchised by Cincinnati. This was reported less than 30 minutes ago by Adam Schefter. And of course, that all leaves us with the question of whether Higgins will get a deal done with Cincinnati or if they will work out a trade with another team. Now, Higgins has reacted to this news on Twitter. He simply posted the word tag with one simple period. So I don't know if you would take that as a celebration. I wouldn't. But T. Higgins, has been franchised by Cincinnati. We'll see if they can get a deal done. Diana Russini of The Athletic is reporting at this hour that Cincinnati and Jamar Chase have continued to negotiate on his new contract. And according to Russini, the two sides are far apart. And reportedly, Chase wants about $40 million a year on this new contract, which would make him the highest paid receiver in the game. So we look at T. Higgins, we look at Cincinnati. These negotiations right now, they're playing out. But Jamar Chase also having his own negotiation play out with the franchise, and they're still far apart. So nothing is done until it's done. Higgins is tied to Cincinnati at least through July as they try to hammer out a deal. The one question, of course, is will T. Higgins make it uncomfortable for Cincinnati? Will he try to push this publicly? Will he have anything to say? Or will he stay quiet? So that's the breaking news at this hour. Less than a half hour ago, Adam Schefter reporting that T. Higgins has indeed been franchised by Cincinnati. Diana Russini says Chase and Cincinnati continue to negotiate, but they are far apart. And Mark Daniels, this is not a surprise, Mark Daniels of Mass Live tweeted out today that if Cincinnati looked to trade T. Higgins, the Patriots would likely be interested. So that's the latest on T. Higgins. Let's move forward because there is a lot to get to. I want to update you on Will Campbell, what is being said, what is being reported about Campbell. I want to get into free agency because the last 72 hours or so has been out of control. Mass Live dumped a huge report on us. The Boston Herald with Andrew Callahan and Doug Kyde dumped a gigantic report in the Herald yesterday. Mike Giardi, Phil Perry, a lot of people writing about this offseason. Before I get to Will Campbell, let me begin with Charlie with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Charlie. Happy Monday. Love the new vibe. Onward and upward for Everything Pats in 2025. Thank you, Charlie. Much appreciated the $10 super chat that you sent. The support that you continue to show means the world to me. And yes, as you see, we've got some new logo action. We've got a new background. We've got a little bit of a new scheme as far as color and all of that. Hopefully you enjoy it. Edward asks, you changed the name of your channel. Yes, it's Everything Pats, a New England Patriots podcast. Moving forward, we talked about it on Friday. So yes, it's been changed, and it is an effort to try to drive some traffic to YouTube by using the Patriots name within the title. And it also, Edward, it also clarifies what we do, because still to this day, some people, when it was the Nick Cattle show, were asking, what about the Celtics? What about the Bruins? What about the Red Sox? You can get that news at my Patreon. All right, so let's get to Will Campbell. We talked about this last Friday. Greg Bedard came out and tweeted that Will Campbell measured last spring, and the National Football Scouts measured his arm length at 32 7/8 inches, which is 1/8 of an inch away from that benchmark of 33-inch arms. We talked about it on Friday, and I said, hey, if you believe that he's a tackle, and the Patriots reportedly believe he's a tackle, if you believe he's a tackle, then 1/8 of an inch should not make as big of a deal. But now you look at it, 32 5/8 is actually what Campbell measured in at yesterday during the combine. So let's just call it 32.5-inch arms. His wingspan 77 and 3/8. Now, that's obviously another problem, not just the arm length, but the wingspan. Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus posted this about Will Campbell. His 32 and 5/8 inch arms rank in just the 7th percentile for tackles. And his 77 and 3/8 inch wingspan would be the shortest of any tackle since at least 2011. So it has been 14 years, at least 14 years, since we've seen a tackle prospect with a wingspan as short as Will Campbell's. Mike Giardi tweeted this about Campbell. There are only 6 starting tackles. We're talking about regular tackles. There are only 6 starting tackles last season that were under the 33-inch threshold. So only 6 guys starting at tackle in the NFL last year had shorter than 33-inch arms. Alaric Jackson, who re-signed with the Rams, is actually one of those guys. He's at 32.5-inch arm length. So now we look at this. And now we go from 32 and 7/8 to 32 and 5/8. You can just call it 32.5 if you'd like, 1/8 of an inch away from 32.5-inch arm length. And what we have to realize is that if the Patriots draft Will Campbell at number 4, and the Patriots believe that Will Campbell is a tackle, what the Patriots are telling us is that Will Campbell is a unicorn. He's a unicorn with the arm length, but most of all with the wingspan. To draft him and play him at tackle, you have to believe that he is truly special, that his ability on the field makes him a unicorn. His ability on the field allows him to play tackle. So that's the question. Do the Patriots think that Will Campbell is a unicorn? Do they think that he breaks the mold? That he breaks the mold so much that with that wingspan, shortest wingspan since at least 2011, out of guys who want to play tackle, if they feel like he's that kind of guy, then they're going to draft him. Now, with this short wingspan and arm length, what does a tackle need to survive at the NFL level? The tackle needs smarts, and the tackle needs athleticism, feet, right? Because if your feet are moving and you're a very good athlete, then you might be able to survive with shorter arms and a short wingspan. You have to be able to move, though. You have to be very athletic to survive. That part of Will Campbell's combine was actually the good news. Burt Breer tweeted out, Campbell crushed his meetings, apparently. Crushed his meetings. Known as a very smart football player, and apparently he was great during the interview process. He also ran under a 5 in the 40-yard dash at 319 pounds. So Breer posted, even with the arm length concern, Breer says that he could still see Campbell going in the top 5 of this draft. Now, there's an athleticism score called the RAS. I'll use it during draft season from time to time. An RAS is the relative athletic score, and it's from 0 to 10. Campbell, yesterday at the Combine, he scored an unofficial 9.88 out of a possible 10. That ranked Will Campbell 17th out of 1,379 offensive tackle prospects from 1987 to 2025. So what we have here with Will Campbell is a guy who historically has short arms, short wingspan, but also historically pretty damn athletic, finishing 17th out of 1,379 offensive tackle prospects since 1987. So while he did not pass the arm length test and the wingspan test, he more than flourished when it came to the athletic testing and when it came to his interviews. Now, here's what Mike Giardi wrote at BSJ today. What Campbell did in testing shows why everyone I talked to in Indy believes this is a good to potentially great player. At what position is the question? Since 2003, I want you to absorb this. Since 2003, there are only 4 players to weigh 315 plus pounds, have over a 30-inch vertical, and run a sub 5.0 in the 40. Only 4 guys have done that. Trent Williams in 2010, Tristan Wirfs in 2020, and Armand Membo, who is another tackle in this class. That's it, along with Campbell. Those are the only 4 human beings since 2003 to weigh more than 315 pounds, have a 30-inch vertical, over a 30-inch vert, and run a sub-5 40. Campbell also cracked 20 miles per hour on his 40 for a 6'5", 319-pounder. Those are some absurd testing numbers. So again, short arms, short wingspan, but knocked the athletic testing out of the park yesterday at the Combine. So ultimately, the question is whether or not the Patriots want Will Campbell at number 4. Here's what Giardi wrote. Patriots like the player. And as reported earlier this week, they see him as a tackle first. So again, another report that the Patriots see Campbell as a tackle. That said, Giardi writes, those I talked to were not adamant about that, making me question if Campbell is in play at number 4. So Giardi says, the people that he spoke with, they're not necessarily adamant about Will Campbell being a tackle. And so Giardi wonders if Will Campbell's going to be in play for the Patriots at 4. Here's what Phil Perry wrote. The view of Vrabel's approach from other clubs is that he'll value size. It's a big man's game. Patriots have glaring needs along both lines of scrimmage. But 2 of the glass-eating types considered to be top of the draft options measured in such a way that taking either in the top 5 could be difficult. Michigan defensive tackle Mason Graham weighed in at 296. Campbell checked in with an arm length of just over 32.5 inches. Campbell tested as an elite athlete, but so did Missouri's Armand Membu, and with 33.5-inch arms. Mark Daniels posted today, I don't think these numbers, talking about Will Campbell's arm length, I don't think these numbers are a surprise. I was told the Patriots view Campbell as a tackle with the understanding that if length became an issue, he'd easily move to guard. Lots of fans of Campbell inside Gillette Stadium. So short arm length, short wingspan, crushed the athleticism tests, was great in the interview process. And when you read how some Patriots beat writers are reacting to the arm length, it seems like it's up in the air of whether or not they would actually use the 4th pick in the draft on Will Campbell. And I've got to tell you, again, I'm not an offensive line guru, okay? But this has to all be about the film. I said this on Friday. If Doug Marrone and Hotailing and Kugler, and maybe they place a phone call to Dante Scarnecchia, they have those conversations, and those guys say, no, we think Will Campbell is a tackle. They have to be right. They have to be right. Because to me, you cannot draft Will Campbell at 4 if he ends up playing guard. You just can't do it. I think that would be a bad waste of that asset. Top 5 pick, I'm not using it on a guard. So if the offensive line coaches believe that Campbell's a tackle and the plan is to play him at tackle and he survives and he plays well at tackle, then I'm fine with picking him at 4. But you have to be almost 100% committed to the idea that Will Campbell's a tackle. Because if you draft him as a tackle and you play him as a guard, you now have Mike Onwenu, who you're paying a bunch of money to play right guard. And then you've got the number 4 overall pick playing left guard in Will Campbell. And that's way too much to devote to that position. You can get guards elsewhere. So if there's any, I said this on Friday, if there's any shred of doubt about Campbell playing tackle, I'm not taking him at 4. So me personally, I'm leery. I would trust the very smart coaches that the Patriots have when it comes to offensive line play. I would trust those guys that they would hit the evaluation, but I'm leery. I'm concerned. If it were me, I'd look at this and say, this guy has to be a unicorn. He's got to be special, because if he's not special with that arm length, with that wingspan, he's going to end up playing guard. And I'm not spending the 4th pick on a guard. I'm not doing it. All right. We got a lot to talk about regarding free agency. Before we get there, don't forget to help us out. We're going to need to do this an awful lot over the next couple of weeks as we rebrand here. Everything Pats, a New England Patriots podcast. Don't forget to click that thumbs up as you watch us on YouTube. Help drive that algorithm, right? More eyeballs. So don't forget to click that thumbs up. Takes a second of your time. Doesn't cost you anything. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Comments mean an awful lot as well. to the program. So don't forget to comment. Would you be okay drafting? Would you be okay drafting Will Campbell at number 4 after what happened at the combine yesterday? Yes or no? Throw your comments in. Likes, comments, they help us. And also don't forget to subscribe. Our goal is 6,500 subscribers by the draft. We need to get there. We've got about 450 subs over the next month and a half to get there. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. My friends at Spotify, Apple Pods, you know the deal. Rate and review. Zell Slayer. Oop, that's the wrong one. It moved. Gabaguru, you can't. He would be an outlier at tackle. I agree with you. I'm leery of it. Right now, I'm not comfortable with it whatsoever. I would inevitably have to trust Doug Marrone and the other guys having the conversations in that facility right now. But if it were me, I would not draft Will Campbell because, as you put it, he's got to be the outlier. Drago Arts says, hell no. Doesn't want it. C. Vang, do you guys like Banks since Campbell's arms are short? Banks didn't have that long of an arm reach either. I think Banks was like around 33 inches. So it's not like Banks had extremely long arms. He did hit that benchmark, but he's just at 33. Casey Reed, $10 super chat. Congratulations on all the success, Nick. I remember you trying to get to 1,000 subs. Love the new logo. Thank you. Hopefully, all of you appreciate the background. That John Hannah jersey, it's signed, by the way, if I move my giant head. That John Hannah jersey, my brother actually got that for me. It's either for Christmas or my birthday, and I've had it for years. I haven't been able to put it up on a wall yet. There it is. So hopefully you like the new background. Hopefully you like the new intro music, the new logo, all that stuff. Casey, I appreciate you. That $10 super chat. Hamza says, don't draft Will Campbell. So right now, doesn't look like a lot of people want Will Campbell. Mike Fitz says, old man, didn't realize Scar was making the pick at 4. He's not making the pick at 4. Again, we've talked about Scarnecchia and how involved he is or not involved he is. And a lot of people will tell you that he's a phone call away. So he's willing to have conversations, and if they want to bounce certain things off him, they will bounce certain things off him. So he's a part of the, he's a part of the resources that you can use to try to figure out if Campbell's the guy. All right, let's get to free agency. Tons of reporting. Of course, the Patriots have $28 million in cap space. The number one need is left tackle. I mentioned this earlier. Alaric Jackson decided to re-sign with the Rams, so he's officially off the market. And all of us know who the guy is, right? We all know that Ronnie Stanley is the guy the Patriots are looking at. And it's been reported by a bunch of people over the last few days that Ronnie Stanley's the guy. Andrew Callahan, Doug Kyde in the Herald. They wrote this: Stanley is among the Patriots' top targets. If the Patriots whiff on their top targets, a group that consists of mid-level veterans and top-of-the-market talents, they will pivot to plans B, C, and, if necessary, D at select positions. One such example is left tackle. The Patriots would be comfortable signing any of Stanley, Dan Moore from Pittsburgh, or Cam Robinson from Minnesota. Cam Robinson was a disaster in the playoffs. I think he gave up 12 pressures in one game. Phil Perry and others also noting that Stanley is a top target. Stanley's the guy they want, and they're willing to pay a lot of money to bring Ronnie Stanley in. The question is, will Stanley actually hit free agency? Jeremy Fowler wrote this at ESPN.com. The sense out of Indy at the Combine, is that the Ravens and Stanley can agree to terms on an extension in the coming days. It's hardly a slam dunk, but there's a sentiment to try to make that happen. So Fowler says the Ravens want to keep Stanley. They are willing to pay him some good money. They're having conversations. An extension could get locked up in the next few days. It is not a slam dunk. It is not a given. So we'll see how it all unfolds in Baltimore with Stanley. And it just reminds us, you can't control everything. If you're the Patriots, you can't control everything. What the Patriots have to do is they've got to walk into this offseason and have a plan. What is your plan? What's your plan A? Who are you going after? How much money are you spending? Et cetera, et cetera. And then you've got to have contingencies. You've got to be able to pivot, much like what Elliott Wolf and Mike Vrabel talked about last week during the combine, right? So you've got to be able to pivot. If your plan A doesn't unfold, what's plan B, what's plan C, and what's plan D if you've got to get to plan D? But you can't control everything. You can't control T. Higgins getting franchise tagged. You can't control if Ronnie Stanley stays in Baltimore because Baltimore gives them a bunch of money. You couldn't control Alaric Jackson staying in Los Angeles. He got paid the money. He wanted to stay. So all you can do if you're the Patriots is have a plan, have contingencies ready, and be willing to spend money. Now, here's what's been written about what the Patriots are willing to do. Again, to the Herald, Callahan, Caid. Patriots' plan is to come heavy on day one by extending their best offers to their top targets, ideally a left tackle, receiver, defensive lineman, and defensive playmakers in the back seven. Unlike past off seasons, the Patriots will not hesitate to sign a player if a recent draft pick plays the same position. Music to my ears. Patriots banked way too much on the 2024 draft. When the 2024 draft did not work in year one outside of Drake May, then the team ran into trouble because they didn't do enough in free agency. They swung and missed in the draft, at least in year one. We'll see if some of those guys bounce back. But they banked so much on the draft that they were in trouble. And so what Callahan and Caid are reporting is that the Patriots are not going to do that this year. They're not going to do that. They have contingency plans in place. If their free agency plan A doesn't play out, then they're going to pivot. They're going to go out and sign some veterans, guys that they think can be on this roster day one and help. And they're not just going to rely on draft picks, and they're not going to sit there and say, oh, well, we drafted Caden Wallace last year in round 3, so we might not need a right tackle because we're going to believe in Caden Wallace. That is not what the Patriots are going to do this offseason, according to Caid and Callahan. Here's Mass Live on spending. Vrabel's comments about the Patriots showing aggression in free agency was not lip service. It's been reinforced by sources around the league. Vrabel's team is widely expected to hit free agency hard. There's going to be a lot of moves. I'm not telling you there's going to be a lot of, top-notch, top-tier players coming into New England via free agency, but there are going to be a lot of moves. This team is going to be active. That's what they're going to do. They're going to be active. All right, so need number 2, defensive end pass rush. I've talked about that the last couple of weeks. Defensive end, edge, pass rush. Now, when we talk about free agency at that position, we first have to acknowledge there's a different profile of player now with Vrabel. And I've mentioned this a couple times, want to mention it to people that may be just joining us for the first time. Mike Vrabel, Terrell Williams, they believe in guys that get after the quarterback. They're not so worried about containing the edge and containing the run game. They want to be aggressive up front. So it's a different type of edge. They're not necessarily in love with guys like Anthony Jennings. They want guys that have a little bit more athleticism, have a little bit better of a first step, and can get after the quarterback more often. So it's a different profile on the end than what we've seen over the past several years, past 20 years with Belichick and then Covington. Now, of course, defensive line, defensive end, it's pretty deep. It's deep in the draft, and you have a number of names in free agency. Now, the first name that I know many of you are going to say is Josh Sweat. But maybe the Patriots are not interested in Josh Sweat, Philadelphia Eagles defensive end. Here's what the Herald wrote. These are guys the Patriots are not expected to target. Josh Sweat, Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs, Khalil Mack. Those players I just named, Sweat, Cooper, Diggs, and Mack. According to Andrew Callahan and Doug Caid, those players are not expected to draw interest from the Patriots. So if you were hoping that Josh Sweat was going to be the answer, not according to Callahan and Caid. Phil Perry wrote this about Josh Sweat if you're wondering why they're not going to be in on him. Perry wrote, there are executives who look at Sweat and wonder if he represents a sound long-term investment. He'll be 28 years old, and though he's made 61 starts in the last 4 years, he had a devastating knee injury in high school. He was told his leg may have to be amputated. that could give teams pause. The Eagles gambled on him with relatively low investments twice in the 2018 draft, 4th round, and then did it again in 2021 when re-signing him. For teams who view signing Sweat as a third roll of the dice, they will be reluctant to overpay despite his strong showing in the Super Bowl. So it's the old injury from the high school days that might get people to not spend the $20+ million a year on somebody like Josh Sweat. How about Harold Landry? I see Corey jump in and say, get Landry. How about Harold Landry? Here's what Phil Perry wrote about Landry. He's an intriguing fit, but league sources wonder if Vrabel would still be interested. He'll be 29. His motor appeared to run hot and cold by those who scouted him in 2024, and he's thought to have played at a weight lighter than his listed 252. Landry ranked 146th out of 155 qualified rushers in Pro Football Focus's pass rush grade a season ago. Now, that's what Perry writes, but Mass Live, Karen Garrigian, Chris Mason, Mark Daniels, Mass Live wrote that the Patriots would get involved if Landry gets released. So if Landry gets released by Tennessee, the Patriots would show interest according to Mass Live. They obviously don't want to give up an asset. They don't want to give up a pick for Landry, but if he gets released, they'll be in on that. So pretty interesting stuff. So if it's not going to be Josh Sweat, and they might not be ultra into the idea of Harold Landry, then who? Who? Well, Phil Perry gave us some names. Malcolm Kuntz is a name to look at. Marcus Davenport is a name to look at. And Darrell Taylor from Chicago is a name that you look at. Those are 3 guys that Phil Perry wrote in his column today that the Patriots could be interested in. Kuntz, Davenport, Taylor. And I would not be surprised. I've talked about this. I would not be surprised if the Patriots focus at edge in the draft. Now, I'm not saying the number 1 pick, right? I'm not talking about the 4th overall pick because Abdul Carter's not going to be there. But I would not be surprised if the Patriots look on day 2, day 3, and they try to land at least 1 or 2 defensive edge players. I wouldn't be surprised if they go after that position heavy in the draft. Because if you look at the defensive end prospects in this draft, a lot of guys kind of fit that Vrabel mold. Guys that are, supreme athletes on the outside. So I would not be surprised if the Patriots dive into the draft and they say, we're going to draft 1 or 2 guys that we think can play the edge early on. All right, I got more on free agency. We have a lot more notes to get through. I'll just remind you quickly, don't forget to help a brother out. Like, comment, and subscribe. Like, comment, subscribe. Those 3 things help us tremendously, especially the thumbs up as you watch on YouTube, and especially the comments. Don't forget to do those 3 things for us if you enjoy the content. Again, this is now Everything Pats, a New England Patriots podcast. Moved on from the last iteration. That was my name. We're just talking Patriots. All right, let's continue. How about wide receiver? Well, we talked about T. Higgins to start the show, so we can move on from him. Chris Godwin, according to many, I mean, you read pretty much every Patriots beat writer, and they're saying that Godwin is somebody that the Patriots are very interested in. The issue, again, you can't control everything. A lot of people in the game believe that Godwin getting to free agency is unlikely. A lot of people think he's going to stay in Tampa Bay. But if Godwin became available, if he did hit free agency, the Patriots would be in. They would absolutely be in on Chris Godwin. And I'd be fine with it. He has the injury history, but Godwin checks a lot of boxes if you're the Patriots. Okay, outside of Godwin, again, because it's unlikely he leaves Tampa. So what happens if Godwin stays in Tampa and Higgins is now tagged? What happens? Well, Andrew Callahan and Doug Kyde report that the front office has, quote unquote, kicked the tires on a potential trade for DK Metcalf. While the front office weighs the ripple effects of making a player they're not familiar with, like Metcalf, the new highest paid player on the team. Now, this is interesting, right? So they kicked the tires. They kicked the tires on Metcalf, according to Callahan and Kyde. They kicked the tires with Seattle to gauge the interest of them wanting to trade DK Metcalf or not. But The one thing that they're concerned with is if they did trade for DK Metcalf, they'd have to pay him a ton of money. And they're concerned about paying somebody that they have no history with. They don't know well. They have some concern paying that guy a bunch of money. If Metcalf walks into the locker room as the highest paid Patriot and they don't really have a background with him, that could cause some issues, right? That could cause some issues. Now, Jeff Howe reports today that it seems unlikely that Metcalf is going to get traded. So if it's not Higgins, if it's not Godwin, if it's not Metcalf, who is it going to be? Because you look at guys, especially like DK Metcalf, he fits the profile of a Mike Vrabel wide receiver, right? Think A.J. Brown. He's got the size. He's got the catch radius. He can make contested catches. He's physical. He gets downfield. That's the kind of receiver. That's the kind of receiver that Mike Vrabel likes. That's the kind of guy. That's the kind of guy. By the way, I just saw Josh Gemini chat up Jordan Schultz, so I pulled up Jordan Schultz, and here's what Jordan Schultz just tweeted 4 minutes ago. Shout out to you, Josh. I appreciate you. The Patriots, with the most cap space by far, are set to be aggressive, especially at wide receiver. They tried last year but fell short. With Drake May, they should have an easier time attracting talent and are willing to spend, whether through free agency or a blockbuster trade. So again, we've talked about Higgins. We have talked about Godwin. We have talked about Metcalf. If those three guys are unlikely, where could the Patriots go at wide receiver? Brandon Ayuk is a name that has come up. And yes, I know, it's deja vu. But Brandon Ayuk's name has come up. And even Ian Rappaport over the last couple of days has noted that Ayuk could be available. And the reason why is San Francisco's ownership, they want to cut a little bit of money. They want to cut a little bit of the money, and they've got to sign Brock Purdy. They're going to sign Brock Purdy to a contract that's like $45+ million a year. So Ayuk could be available. Of course, he's coming off an ACL, MCL tear. So, how much is he going to play in 2025? What do you have to give up for Ayuk? I'd imagine you don't have to give up as much as you were willing to give up last offseason. So Ayuk is a name to keep an eye on. Again, Higgins looks like he's staying, or at least he's locked up right now on the franchise tag. Godwin, according to many sources, believe that he's likely to stay in Tampa. Seattle doesn't seem like they want to deal DK Metcalf. So you can only control what you can control. It's a theme on today's podcast, right? And so Brandon Ayuk is a name that could be available. So, do they step up and look at Ayuk? Phil Perry said that they would consider trading for Brandon Ayuk. Another name is Jacoby Myers, old friend Jacoby Myers. We know he works in the offense of Josh McDaniels. We know he was very comfortable here in New England. He should have never left New England, is what it is, right? But Jacoby Myers is somebody who Phil Perry has written could get traded by Vegas. He's walking into the final year of his contract. He could be here in New England, possibly. He could be a trade target. Now, Myers is not a number one. I don't think any of us believe he's a true wide receiver one, but we know he's productive. We know he's dependable. So he's another name that's been brought up. Mass Live, interestingly enough, has reported that the Patriots are not in on Cooper Kupp. They are not interested in Cooper Kupp as of right now. So from all these reports, it seems like we can cross off T. Higgins as of now. We can likely cross off Chris Godwin. We can likely cross off DK Metcalf. We could cross off Cooper Kupp. Of course, Deebo Samuel got traded over the weekend to Washington for a 5th-round pick. And that really kind of just leaves you with Davante Adams as the guy who could hit free agency and is likely going to hit free agency. Davante Adams is somebody that, I haven't seen any reporting over the last week about Davante Adams and the Patriots, whether or not they'd be interested in Adams. But he's really the name that you would look at on a short deal, big money up front, he's really the last guy that could hit free agency that would make a difference. He would make a difference. Now, of course, there's a lot of things with Davante. Does he want to win? Does he want to just go continue to play alongside Aaron Rodgers? Does he want to go back to Green Bay? He threw that out there. So there's a lot of questions about Davante and what he would want to do. But if you walked up to Davante Adams and you dumped a bunch of money on the table, would he be interested in that? The overall point here is, look, limited options, right? Not everybody that was on the list a month ago is going to be available, and we know this about free agency. Teams keep their best players. Not a lot of guys hit free agency, and guys that hit free agency inevitably have question marks surrounding them, right? Like Josh Sweat in the injury back in high school. Ronnie Stanley, he's now in his 30s. He has an injury history. Didn't miss any games last year, but missed a number of games before that. So you're dealing with a lot of questions when you walk into free agency. Everybody is. Chris Godwin, if he gets to free agency, he dislocated his ankle last year, missed a bunch of time, tore his ACL a few years back. So everybody's going to have questions, whether it's age or injury or attitude. There's going to be questions. That's what free agency is. That's why when we talk about how this team is going to build a sustainable winner, that has to come through the draft. You can supplement your roster with free agents, right? Especially the middle tier guys. There are guys out there that I think the Patriots will sign that will help, and I'll get into some names in a minute. But you can't bank on signing all these quote-unquote big names because most of them don't hit the market. And it's difficult to sign them coming off back-to-back 4-win seasons. So that's the challenge of it. And I think we talk about spending all the time with the Crafts. I said this on 98.5 The Sports Hub, the last show I did, right? Not yesterday, but the last Sunday prior to that. One of the major reasons why the Patriots have not spent a lot of money the past decade or so is because they have flopped in the draft. Think about the guys they re-signed and spent money on, right? Michael Wenu, Kyle Duggar, their own picks. That's what teams do. Teams spend money to retain their players. That's what Cincinnati is planning to do with Chase, Higgins, and maybe even Hendrickson. When you don't draft well, you're not spending a lot of money because free agency just usually isn't very good. And most of the time, you're overspending on guys. So, it's a problem. Bad drafting has impacted this team on so many different levels over the past decade. It's not even funny. And so they've got to make sure that they can do something in this draft and the following drafts to start building that sustainability. All right, how about some other names? Plenty of names thrown out there. Let's add, okay? Let's talk about some more players, free agency wise. Like, comment, subscribe, help the pod out. Milton Williams, defensive tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a very popular name. Mass Live wrote that Williams is going to be a top target of the Patriots. Callahan, Kide, Chad Graff of The Athletic, Mike Giardi, all of those writers report that Williams is going to be a top target for the Patriots. So if you're looking for one of the bigger names on the free agency market, if he gets there, and it looks like he's probably going to get there because of the depth on that Philadelphia defensive line and the fact that the draft has some depth at that spot as well. If you're looking for one of the bigger names on the market, universally, it seems like Milton Williams is one of those names. Interior defensive lineman. He's 6'3", 291, so he's under 300 pounds, but he fits what Mike Vrabel likes. Mike Vrabel likes interior defensive linemen that can get after the quarterback. Milton Williams is one of those guys. Matt Bowen of ESPN listed Williams as a top fit with the Patriots going back a couple of weeks ago. Other names. How about 49ers cornerback Charvarius Ward? That's according to the Boston Herald. Charvarius Ward is among the Patriots' top targets. He would be a good fit as a second corner, right? He could be that second corner opposite of Christian Gonzalez. Now, I like Alex Austin, but interestingly enough, we haven't heard anything about Alex Austin. And he's an early rights restricted free agent, so that's a pretty interesting situation. Does Alex Austin stay? But Charvarius Ward is a name among top targets for the Patriots, according to Callahan and Kai. Also, as rumor has it, the Patriots covet Jets linebacker Jamien Sherwood. I love this. That's an intriguing name. It might not be a name that everybody's talking about when you go to the bar on Friday nights, but Jamien Sherwood is the type of player that I would love the Patriots to acquire. I have been screaming this from the mountaintops for the last 5 or 6 years. The Patriots have lacked athleticism on the second level. Sherwood is crazy athletic. He's only like 215, 220 pounds, but he's crazy athletic. Taylor Kiles of CLNS actually posted video of Sherwood in coverage this past year. He is that kind of linebacker I've been dying for this team to get. If you could bring in Sherwood, you have that sideline to sideline linebacker who, even though he's undersized, he hits. He hits pretty hard, and he's got that athleticism. That's a name that I'm very interested in. Jamien Sherwood. That guy is intriguing to me. Other names for the Patriots, according to Callahan and Kai. The Patriots are working to infuse more speed in their defensive front, thank God, which will feature smaller, faster players compared to most of their defenses the past 2 decades. This is what I've been talking about, right? Mike Vrabel, Terrell Williams, they want fast, they want aggressive, they want speed, athleticism. That's what they want in their front seven. That's what they want. They want speed, athleticism, and aggressiveness. Finally, that's what this team needs. Guys on the edge that can get after the quarterback, linebackers that can cover, linebackers that can go sideline to sideline and make plays. That's what this team needs. That's what this team has needed. Let's stick with Callahan and Kai. The Patriots should be in the market for Vikings cornerback Byron Murphy. I like it. Byron Murphy, a very versatile corner. Not the biggest guy in the world, but he's very, very versatile. And he's somebody that you could see him, playing in the slot at times. You could see him playing on the outside. He's under 6 feet, but Byron Murphy's a good corner. He's a good corner. Jets cornerback DJ Reed is another name mentioned by Callahan and Kai. The front office has expressed interest in re-signing Jonathan Jones on a cheaper, team-friendly deal. Vrabel, I wonder, he was one at the combine last week. He highlighted the slot position, right? He highlighted the nickel back. And so he was talking about how important the nickel is. And you could see some of these guys, right? DJ Reed could play some of that. Byron Murphy could play some of that. You could even stick Sherwood in there, depending on the matchup. So we talked about the nickel, right? And how important that is. It's obviously something that Mike Vrabel is obsessed with, is trying to address nickel. And you look at Marcus Jones, as explosive as he is, he's a smaller guy. And I don't know if Mike Vrabel is going to be in love with the idea of having Marcus Jones be your nickel back because of his size. DJ Reed, by the way, was also listed by ESPN's Matt Bowen as a top fit with the Patriots. So Jonathan Jones could stay. I wonder if that would be a safety. Is that going to be a safety option? Do they look at Jonathan Jones and say maybe he can play some free safety? Do they look at Jonathan Jones and say, maybe we can play him in the nickel? Maybe we could play him against some slot receivers in the league? Maybe that's the thought process. Callahan and Kai also mentioned, this is interesting, a sleeper position to watch in free agency is center, which is surprising. You got David Andrews. Seems like he's healthy. Maybe they don't feel like he's a guarantee. They kept Ben Brown. He signed on a 1-year deal, short money. So a sleeper position to watch in free agency, according to the Herald, is center. Some other offensive line names and options. Mike Giardi writes that while there may not be a highly priced guy available, there are plenty of B, B-, C+ players who, as he was told, are better than what's on the roster, or at the very least, capable of creating the competition that didn't exist last year. Giardi mentions Tevin Jenkins from Chicago. Patrick McCarry from Baltimore are 2 names others around the league anticipate the Pats being in on. So McCarry, Jenkins, Mass Live also mentioned Macari. Macari's interesting. He's very versatile. He's played all 5 positions on the offensive line for Baltimore throughout his time as a Raven. So I would not be surprised if Macari is one of those guys that, Vrabel's looking at and the front office is looking at and saying, yeah, that guy can bring a ton of versatility. He can start at guard for us if we need him to move to a tackle spot, to move to right tackle in case we have some injury issues. Macari makes a ton of sense. Makes a ton of sense for the Patriots. Like, I think, expect a very active couple of weeks in free agency for the Patriots. As I've said, keep your expectations at a reasonable level because even though the Patriots have a ton of cap space, a lot of these guys stay with their teams. A lot of these guys don't want to move to New England. A lot of these guys look at the last 2 seasons and say, it's not a good football team. So it's not easy to get these guys to sign. I think Mike Vrabel helps. I think the coaching staff helps. I think Drake May helps. And they should have a better chance of landing some free agents this year than they did last year, given the head coach, given the offensive coordinator, and given Drake May. So I think they have a better chance at landing free agents this year than last. But I'm still not sitting here telling you, they're just gonna sign this guy, that guy, and this guy and that guy. But I do think they're going to be very active, and I do think they're gonna sign a bunch of dudes. I think most of them will be in that middle tier, that middle class, which is fine by me because this team needs starters. They need talent. So even some of these guys that are in that middle class, I think they can help you right away. But I think Vrabel, with the changes on defense and the talent that's needed on offense, I think we're going to see a lot of activity over the next couple of weeks. And then they get into the draft and they still say, all right, this is what we have now. And we feel much more comfortable about our roster because we were able to cross off a number of positions that were open via free agency. And now we can focus more on picking the best players in the draft and not be worried about getting handcuffed positionally. So I think it's going to be a very active next couple of weeks. The franchise deadline is tomorrow. The Higgins news is already figured out. So we'll see what happens with Ronnie Stanley. That's obviously the next guy we're looking at. Is Ronnie Stanley going to agree to a deal with Baltimore? If so, you got to look at Dan Moore and some of these other tackles that are on the market. But I think it's going to be a very busy time. We're going to be all over it. It's going to be a lot of fun over the next couple of months. Stick with us. Everything Pats, a New England Patriots football podcast. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. If something breaks, that's big. We will be all over it and go live. If not, next time I talk to you will be Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time right here on YouTube. I appreciate every single one of you. Let's kick this podcast into the next gear as we get ready for free agency next week. And then, of course, the draft in late April. Everything Pats. Appreciate you. Talk to you on Wednesday.